Welcome to episode 6 of Run the Brand, the podcast where endurance meets entrepreneurship. In each episode, we try to share powerful stories and practical lessons from athletes, founders, and creators that push their limits in sports, business, and life. And today, we have a very, very interesting story to tell. So, Tim, what are we going to talk about today?
Man, today one is very special. We will be talking about how we get to film the Road to Championship for the current HYROX World Champion, which is insane. We did this for a brand, one of the biggest nutrition brands in the world, called MyProtein. And the story, how we got even here, is even crazier. So happy to dive in, and especially since you kind of kicked it off at a fair called FIBO. It's a great story to listen to, and I'm happy to actually, for the first time myself, hear the story of how it got to come about. And then we're gonna dive deeper into the communication with them and the sales cycle, and go into how we met the athletes and what happened on the ground, and how this guy actually performed at the HYROX World Championship, which is insane. Let's get into it, shall we?
Super excited about that. And I
Yes.
think, like always, there's a very, very lot of insights, not
Yeah.
just that we want to share our story, but there was a lot of really cool lessons that we learned and mistakes we did. And also, to just give a bit of background, we are not necessarily the biggest media agency yet. That's hopefully going to be one day. And I mean, I think it's really cool to see how, let's say, a smaller, younger agency can land such a big client and shoot with such high profile athletes, because I think there's a lot of things that we did right, that a lot of people that are listening to this right now can apply, that are very important. And obviously, I mean, there seems to be we did something right.
Yeah, that's basically the base of the story, right? How it actually came to about, and how we actually fought. Maybe at the right timing, we don't know, but a bit of luck was in this as well. So happy to be transparent and talk about this. Super keen. But let's run the brand. Let's run it.
Let's lace up and run with it. Let's go.
The whole thing came about at FIBO, right?
Yes.
How, and especially I wasn't here. I wasn't around. I was still back in Sweden. How was it for you? How did you prepare? And how was the atmosphere and actually the first interaction with them?
So it was actually quite funny.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I would consider myself an extrovert for sure.
Yeah.
Even though lately, the older I get, I would call myself an omnivert. But I would generally consider myself an outgoing person. But I'm not the most comfortable in necessarily speaking to strangers. I think you're one of those people that's just amazing and just talking and chatting to everyone and easily getting into it. I mean, I think someone described it perfectly. I think it was Ross. He said you kind of like these light catchers for mosquitoes. You attract people like that. But so to be fair, just to give a bit of background, the FIBO is the biggest fitness fair or fitness and health fair in the world, I think, not just Europe. And I literally spent there 2 days just walking around, speaking to people, not just necessarily trying to sell anything, just to talk to people, hear about what's going on in the industry, what are their maybe plans for the year, what are they struggling with, what are their goals, just to get a bit of like market insight in general. And obviously taking the chance and saying like, hey, that sounds cool. We have a few ideas actually for you guys. Let's help. And one of those companies I really wanted to talk to was MyProtein. Amazing brand, have like a really cool profile roster of athletes that really have a cool chance and story to tell. And I think that was also one thing that we actually wanted to talk with them about. But to tie this in full circle, not to make this long, it was quite late in those 2 days where I think I was close to the MyProtein stand and I saw it already, and I was like walking past, just checking out how's the situation, how's it looking, and thinking about speaking to those guys that were busy there. I almost didn't do it.
No way.
I almost
What?
didn't go and actually approach them. The thing were like 2 or 3 times where I walked past and I just didn't feel like the right moment. We were busy talking to other customers and didn't feel like there's anyone that has the time right now to talk to me. And literally it was like 2 or 3 times I walked past. I even then continued to go to some other stands and talk to other brands. And then just before I was about to leave the FIBO, I actually walked past MyProtein again. And I was like, fuck. Again, not a good timing. Shit.
Yeah.
walked past, was about actually to leave. And I was like, okay, fuck it, come on. You have nothing to lose. I mean, in my head, I was like, yeah, it's such a big brand, probably anyway not going to want to work with us, playing those mind games. But I was like, okay, fuck it. What do you have to lose? Went back, started talking to a guy. He wasn't the right person to talk to. So he referred me to another guy. Then I kind of pitched him the same thing again, talked to him. And he was like super down, super cool, super nice guy, amazing. Exchanged LinkedIn's, and that's how it basically started. Then we connected on LinkedIn from there. And yeah, I think from there on, you also have been part of the picture.
Yeah, I think from there on, I think the outreach was mainly over LinkedIn, and then you were chatting back and forth with the person, and then you scheduled. It came to the schedule where I basically joined and got to meet the person as well. Super kind person. And then it went on to the next round where we prepared a pitch, which was insane. And then I think the pitch stage, I think it was one of the first pitches we prepared from ground up, right? Fully for a specific brand after they kind of had interest. Before, all the pitches we've had was kind of, there was no commitment or there was no touch point before we pitched without knowing the interest and everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was one of the first pitches, which was amazing. It was a different process. We heard from the discovery call. We kind of knew what they're looking for and everything. But I gotta say as well that you did, before you went to FIBO, you actually prepared, like you did a lot of research and you actually prepared like these small pitches as well. Which brand, what you say, what they're maybe struggling with. And I think that is one of the best things I was actually very impressed by as well. Because I think you can't just approach people without your preparation.
Yeah.
Preparation is key. Preparation is everything. And I think that is definitely one of the reasons we're here where we are today. The preparation you've kind of made before. You want to dive into maybe the two key lessons that you've learned, you've seen in practice, and why you did it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you pointed out very nicely. I think also we did that mistake before. That's why we changed it, especially for the FIBO, and we learned also from our mistakes that we went to some trade fairs or events without necessarily, we knew which brand's going to be there, but we didn't have maybe time or we didn't have the resources to really fully dive in and maybe come up with some concepts or ideas or actually just do the research. What are they struggling with? What are maybe some solutions we can provide? So that when you speak to those brands, they actually understand that you're not just there just to get contacts and talk to them, but you actually really put in the effort and time to understand their struggles and problems, or even the things that they are planning on to do. And then you're able to speak about these topics and things, which obviously shows them, okay, wow, they really put in the effort. They're interested in working with us. I mean, it's always what you kind of want to convey. I think a problem is that, especially in sales, a lot of people always focus on features, upside and numbers and data. But we shouldn't forget that we are humans and we're interacting with humans. We want to work with humans that we like spending time around. So that's really big and an important lesson. But I think also another thing that I've learned that's quite important. That's why we do these trade fairs. There's also another huge brand I approached and talked to, and we're still talking to at the moment. And he even told me that he really appreciates us coming all the way from Berlin to Cologne, showing face and coming and talking to them in person and not just writing an email, because they get so many emails. At one point, it just gets annoying, but it's so refreshing. Actually, people coming and showing up in person to pitch their ideas or offer solutions or just have a nice chat. I mean, this is just the start of something. And when it came to the research I did for the brands, for the FIBO, it doesn't need to be anything crazy. It's also really important that you don't get too fixed and focused on the research and your ideas that you, let's say, researched or came up with. And you don't need to show a pitch deck. I think that's actually also maybe counterproductive, because you want to have a normal human conversation. You want to hear what they are saying. Maybe it's actually not accurate what you research. Maybe it's accurate if you did your research right. But you want to have a very fluent and natural conversation. And if you show a pitch deck or you show something, it might take away from it. So it's just about being able to talk to them about the points they mention
Mm.
and conveying that you understand and that you did your research. You don't need to show it, but it's rather than that you're prepared to talk to them.
I mean, this again proves the phrase that people don't just buy what you have, but they buy because of you. And showing face, being prepared, all these are like it seems like it's a key process that is necessary to actually convey the person or the customer or the client. Yeah, nicely said. And I think the from there on, I think the process actually went forward. But one of the biggest key point, and it was outside of our control, was that the client took very long to respond and was very busy. But funny enough, or lucky for us, HYROX was around the corner. And the brand we were talking to, or MyProtein, is actually or has a collaboration with HYROX all over the globe. Or it's one of the main sponsors. And we knew we kind of had to go there. But at the same time, we pitched it to the brand. They didn't respond. And thus, we were unsure if we should go or we should not go. But we decided to go regardless. Although we had other stuff to do, we decided to go, and the ticket price, thank God, wasn't too much either. And dude, that was one of the craziest experiences because I feel like now we are hooked on HYROX, which is amazing. But dude, the atmosphere, the second we entered, was just insane. I was like, what is happening here? I thought it's just this competition and people go and run and do their thing and go home, but it's so igniting. It ignites the fire. You see the people struggling, sweating, and everybody competing. I mean, we come from the background of competition regardless. And thus, I think it was a done deal for us. But still, we went in there, although we had like hiccups, technical hiccups, if you remember as
Oh, yeah,
well,
for
right?
sure.
That was rough, but we made and did the best. But I think one key lesson here as well is to show initiative. Nothing is really promised
Yeah.
every single time, but I think to go the extra step sometimes really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, like you said, sometimes, I mean, there's this mindset in the industry, which is very tricky. And I feel like there's no right or wrong. A lot of people say don't do anything for free. But in a sense, it's not you doing things for free if it's part of like a sales cycle or like part of, let's say, a way of showing that you really want to work with that brand. Because sometimes you just need to think about, okay, what can we do different that other people are not willing to do?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you should do projects for free, but we were like, okay, we are already based in Berlin. There is the HYROX event for the first time in Berlin. We can squeeze that in.
Yeah.
We just gonna go there, look for some MyProtein athletes, get some shots, and I mean, see if we can provide some sort of value to the brand. And I mean, we were lucky to capture some really cool footage, and actually that was also another thing for us was important to get there and maybe speak to another person from the team, which we eventually did. We met like also a really, really cool person from their team, which was amazing or is amazing, that we could talk to. And just having this initiative and also providing them value in, like, I think we turned around the content in literally a day.
Yeah.
That they would otherwise would have not had. So we could provide them really quick value. Kind of also, it's always about at some point it gets to this point where clients want to be reassured and want to feel safe that you can deliver on your promise.
Yes.
And that's basically what we did here too. We kind of gave them a test, a trial that we are able to deliver what we're saying. And literally, because of that event, just I think a few days later, immediately it was like, okay, there's a project, guys.
Yeah, things changed suddenly. Suddenly, the guy who was taking ages kind of responded, and funny enough, the person we met at HYROX came into the mix and conversation as well, and then a third person. So basically, while we were structuring the pitch and the pillars, the package we envisioned to do for them actually depict, which was amazing. And things from there on just went one after the other. Like literally within the next week, can you do this and this and this and this? And then the communication. And I think on a Friday afternoon, we then had scheduled, I think one day before or even the same day, scheduled a meeting with them. everybody came together. We came with we got the brief. Although I must say, the the process wasn't really clean.
Hmm.
Um, I think, and yeah, if we would have more time, I think a lot of stuff would have been different. But due to time and due to, yeah, I think the initiative we took and everything, they have a lot to do.
Hmm.
It's just a season, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But I think we did the best out of it.
Yeah.
Although I was in Sweden and you scheduled a holiday already
Yeah.
with your girlfriend and friends to go to Scandinavia. And dude, this plan really disrupted our planning.
Dude.
Like, I think on the highest level. And for us to, and then we're not just in the business of delivering knowledge, we are in the business of gears and production and technology and
Hmm.
actually editing. There's just so many process and cycles we need to count in. And thus it's not like we went there and delivered a workshop and then done. No, your camera gear needed to be. And then for I gotta say, this guy is one of the craziest guys ever. He ran his Iron
Oh
Man
shit! I forgot about
before. Yeah, you see,
that.
he ran his Iron Man on a Sunday, right? Then went to for family and
No,
everything.
actually, it was if I remember, like I had my Ironman on Sunday.
Yeah.
Supposed to actually travel to my parents, rest a bit before we drive all the way up to the Arctic Circle. But then we had a very important client meeting on the Monday.
Mm.
So instead of like from the Ironman was in Austria, I ran it Sunday. Like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but the most fun thing and amazing thing ever. Super sore on Monday, super wasted. Like I don't know. I was just felt terrible,
Mm.
which was to be expected. On Monday, had a very important client meeting. So I drove from Austria to Munich on Monday, jumped into like a WeWork, jumped onto the meeting, spent a few hours in Munich, slept, drove to my parents, rested one day, drove up all the way to, I think it was, no, I actually didn't drive up. I was supposed to drive up to Oslo or all the way to the Arctic Circle. But because it was so last minute, this whole project, just to give a bit of context, it was roughly a bit less than 2 weeks, maybe I think 10 days till the World Champs of HYROX
Yeah.
in Chicago.
Yeah.
And the project was supposed to showcase the road to World Champs or the road to championship, which meant we needed to deliver and produce all those content pieces before the World Champs, obviously. And it was
100%.
two athletes shooting one. I mean, Tim Wenisch, man, congrats. Amazing athlete, amazing human, super humble. We can talk about it a bit more later. But first of all, I want to say shout out, congrats to this amazing performance.
Man, it was absolutely haywire.
Yeah.
Well done, man. Well done.
But also Silke Arning, which is an amazing female athlete from Germany. And what's very inspiring about her, she's literally working full time while inspiring countless other female, but also male athletes doing
Very
this.
humble.
Yeah.
Amazing people, literally. But at the same time, to pick it up from there, we had the client wanted a strong and fast turnover. That was the biggest keyword and key point. Meaning it's not just the filming and setting up the process to go, the flights, how to get there, how to get the gear there and everything, the logistics, but the editing
Yeah.
as well. And you basically flew then your girlfriend took
But I can actually, like, I think the time frame, it was like everything over 5 days, I think. So we had my parents just to kind of try to portray the picture. It's quite complicated. So I'm sorry, I will try to make it as understandable as possible.
Yeah.
But we were based in Frankfurt or around Frankfurt at my parents' place, where we then took the camper, or we're supposed to take the camper up to Oslo. That was the first stop. Problem is now that actually I had to stay back because we had a shoot in the south of Germany. So I basically just came from Munich, but we had to go back a few days later to film Tim Wenisch. So she drove really amazing. She drove all the way, like 12, 13 hours, all the way to Oslo. We stayed back. You flew down to Frankfurt. I picked you up in Frankfurt. We had to organize all the gear we needed. Luckily, I took everything along beforehand. Then we drove down in the morning, filmed Tim, drove back in the evening. The next morning, I flew to Oslo. You flew back to Copenhagen. I continued to drive with my girlfriend from Oslo all the way to the Arctic Circle, which is somewhere in Bodø. And then we picked up our friends there. got out, flew from Bode back to Frankfurt. You also flew to Frankfurt. I picked you up again. Then we drove all the way to Düsseldorf to film Seka. Drove back the same day. Next morning, you actually stayed back. You took the train from Düsseldorf all the way overnight to
I took
Copenhagen.
the overnight trade, which was a thing. But
And then I flew all the way back from Frankfurt onto the Lofoten. And basically, I think that's also showcasing one thing that we also say is our unique selling point, and that makes us us. We are very agile. We will make it work. It doesn't matter what's going on. We will make it work.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the editing and stuff, it's all about being able to plan and structure everything as efficient as possible. Because I, on purpose, scheduled flights where I have rather long layovers without spending too much time, obviously, because I also obviously want to get back, spend time with my friends and girlfriend. But I schedule everything that way that as soon as I'm done with the shoot, or as soon as we're done with the shoot, I can immediately start editing until I'm back on the Lofoten, so that I can then also deliver everything beforehand and then also relax a bit and enjoy my vacation. And it worked out perfectly. I think every 3 minute, we worked till late in the night in the hotels. We worked in the airports, in the airplanes. Every 3 minute, we just delivered as quickly as possible.
yeah, the car rides, we're strategizing. I think one thing people need to understand is that as young entrepreneurs and our generation of entrepreneurs, it's not everything needs to happen in office or in a call or meeting or whatsoever. We were so, because we are agile and because we want to be agile, we talk in the car. We talk wherever we are strategizing. And since we are focused on what we are doing and kind of have a, I don't know, on the phone, we can pick things up, or sometimes we even work in the car, in the back of the car while your dad was driving. So this mobility, I think, gives us a lot. We don't have to wait until we're here to do this. The world doesn't work like that anymore. And I think it's a big power up to use the tools and the tool stack and the laptops and everything and the freedom we have nowadays to have service everywhere, for example, or internet everywhere, to work everywhere.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest freedom on the macro level, Instagrammable and amazing. But at the same time, it needs, or it comes down to sometime do the hard work in the car, for example, or do the strategy in the car, for example, or while you're walking somewhere, for example. And I think these are stuff people don't see because you don't have time to film it,
Yeah.
or you don't have time to put up something and film it and put it on Instagram because it's just cringe. But there's this beautiful picture, for example, why after Seka, no, it was after Tim. We went to the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, true. Oh
And
my
I
God.
made that picture of you working and selecting the first 3 best pictures to send to Tim for his story. And I think these are the in-betweens that counts, that
Yeah.
matters, and where you must be willing to just put in the work. Of course, I would say the benefit will come later of you relaxing and everything, especially you after your Ironman not really relaxing and doing all that, whatever. You guys need to watch the videos or his Instagram. I think you documented it really well. I enjoyed that process of how you get there, and then the race, and then what comes after.
Yeah.
So, dude, hands down,
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
man, kudos, really well done. But yeah, this is the story of how we got to
Yeah.
film with these athletes. To be honest, one of the biggest learning I took out of this is how beautifully humble they were.
I think also like one of the important thing that ties kind of into this point, it also ties into the point that you said earlier, especially as a young, smaller agency. I feel like one thing that a lot of people often forget about is actually not just client relations, but also the people you film with, like let's being the models or athlete relations. I think one thing that was really important, and I feel like modern agencies are more willing to do that. Yes, in the end, it's still business, but even like not just communicating the classical way via email, but maybe even through WhatsApp or business WhatsApp, just being more responsive and agile, and also kind of understanding that the other people from the company are also just say also humans and treating them more as, let's say, friends
Yeah.
than actually clients. I think that makes the biggest difference. And for us, I mean, which was very nice to hear when we filmed with Seka and Tim, they both told us afterwards that it was really fun filming with them and they never enjoyed it as much filming and feeling comfortable in front of the camera. And I think that's the most important thing for us. It's not necessarily that they saying, oh, yeah, the shots were amazing, it's so cool. Obviously,
Yes.
that's our goal because we want to deliver on the client's vision.
Mm.
But it was way more important. Also, the client came back to us and told us that the athletes told them that they really enjoyed filming with us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing, making people feel comfortable, letting people enjoy and have fun during the process.
Mm.
Because in the end, we're all humans. And for us, especially as a young agency, we don't necessarily want this typical client agency relationship, but see everyone as friends trying to strive together, building something.
Mm.
And I think that's also one thing that I think modern founders and younger agencies starting to do better
Mm.
and shy away or go away from this more classical approach.
Yes, I think just to complement what you just said, I think we talk about this often. Like, would we be ready or able to go have a coffee with this person? Like, that's how we judge if we want to work with someone or not, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing, I think, because at the end of the day, it's a people's business. People make a business. It's not just exchange of services or goods or products, but people is everything. How you vibe with people. It is still important, although it is business profession and there's money involved, but it does not make it just materialistic. I think the people, to be human and to be kind and to be nice still matters. And again, something else we talk about recently, we are picking up more often, is that how we started and what we've learned by just being in the market, right? Because I think one after Tim, and he said it first and was like, you guys were the best people I ever filmed with. And to be honest, that made me the happiest man that day. Because at the end of the day, we are not just in the business of providing value to the client, but we are in the business of interacting with athletes
We're in
as
the
well.
people's business. Yes.
Exactly. And since the athletes are part of our clients, not like they're not working for them, but you know what I mean, or being sponsored by them, it is important to have a relation. We have a two-way relationship or three-way relationship, actually. We have a relationship with the clients and a relationship with the athletes. If one of these do not really work, then the whole triangle is not really going to work. And I think that was one of the biggest realization that, are the athletes people would hang out with as well. And that was really beautiful to see that was the case with Seka and Tim. Yeah.
Definitely. I think also one thing that when you look from the outside, the timing seemed very lucky, but actually when you zoom out, the timing, yes, was a bit of luck, but it also worked out so well
Yeah.
because we made it work.
Yeah.
I mean, to explain a bit more and give a bit more context, we literally are probably one of the only people that had the chance to film Tim and Seka before the World Champs, and in general, like that ever made like a piece of content a bit more about their story and who they are and what their goals are. And obviously, no one could have expected that Tim would perform the way he performed. He literally won the singles, the pro singles, I think 5 seconds before Hunter.
Yeah.
He came in, won the World Champs there, and then 2 days later won the double with a 30-second penalty, which
Indeed.
is amazing. And now we're sitting here. Tim literally just won 2 world champs in HYROX, and we're one of the only agencies or filmmakers that had the chance to film him,
I
make
think
him feel
we
comfortable.
are the only.
Yeah.
The only.
And make
Yeah.
him feel comfortable, like showcasing his beautiful story and his humbleness. I mean, if you guys want to learn a bit more about him, listen to the post interview after he won the champs. Like, this guy is just so humble. It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
But also same Seka, honestly, like her story was so inspiring. I mean, obviously, I think she might have not have been that happy with the results. There were also some things during her race that didn't
Go as planned.
go as planned. And I mean, wishing her everything the best and hoping
Yeah.
that she's doing all right. But just being able to give also a bit more showcase to the German athletes, because HYROX is actually founded by a German. So it was beautiful because I feel like they need a bit more spotlight. They have beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stories. And I think that the timing couldn't have worked out better, especially now. We obviously, that's also one thing we could talk about is what's the next steps? What do you do when something works out that well? You need to keep the momentum going.
Yes. Yes. To not fall into a slump. And I think now that we've delivered, right? Now that the client were happy, now that the athletes were happy and are still willing to work. I mean, the season basically just ended with the World Championship. So there's obviously a break. And then from, let's say, business side, people are going on holidays and stuff. But at the same time, it is usually they say after the game is before the game, right? So even in business, it is the same as in sports. Rest is important, but it does not, although you might slump and everything, which is okay, but it is important to have an after plan. In automotive, they have after sales. So in a lot of businesses, they have after sales. And thus, it is important to, hey, this is cool story, but what's come after?
Yeah.
What's the next process? And to make it in such a way that it actually builds upon each other instead of coming up with a completely new thing. And I think in this case, for example, we've been strategizing already. We've been thinking about it already. And we said it even before
Yeah.
that, okay, let's see how they perform and what's going to happen afterwards. Because I remember waking up in the morning, early morning, I was in Sweden. And the first thing first, I literally jumped onto YouTube
Yeah.
to see the result. I literally cried because I'm like, the race was Hollywood style. It was a movie because 5 seconds is not much.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, especially because I mean, there's also, it's funny because there's like a YouTube series of Hunter McIntyre out now where he's like kind of like he knew that Tim is his biggest competitor, but no one had him on his radar, which would made it even more entertaining.
Yeah.
I was unfortunately not able to watch because I was still in Norway and I was on a mountain and I had no connection. I was so frustrated. It was literally the only spot in those 2 weeks where I had no connection. But the first thing I did also next morning, like checking the results, watching the real life, you texting me, and I was like, no way.
That was insane.
I actually texted him, congratulated him, and it was, I think, 9 or 8 in the morning in European time.
Yeah.
So it's like 4 a.m. in Chicago. I expected him to maybe answer a few hours later, but this guy literally texted me 10 seconds later, said thank you, and I responded, oh, I see it. Probably you didn't get much sleep. And he was like, yeah, I'm hungry at 4 a.m. at night. So this guy, I mean, he's amazing.
He's chill though. He's super chill. But at the same time, I think the second race again, it's just to see, although the whole scene is being called hybrid athlete, I think it is very much of course, it's not their full-time job because all of them have courses or PTs and everything. But at the same time, it is as close to being a full-on athlete as possible because you need to be in the right mindset and game. And I think I heard that it's the first time there was an Elite 15 double at the World Championship.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they were the first one to ever win it. So they made history.
Wow. Yeah,
Which
no,
is insane.
honestly, it was a very, very cool weekend. And I mean, I think it always like, yeah, you can say it was luck, but I think I'm a big firm believer. If you put the work in, I think you're making your own luck.
Yeah.
So you have to put yourself in a position to be found by luck. And that basically was, if you assume, when you look from the outside in, it looks like, oh, yeah, you guys were just lucky you filmed Tim and he won the world championship. But no, I mean, that's what we wanted to do with this podcast, to showcase people all the details and also how long. We started in April was the FIBO, I think. And now it is, by recording is June, and the world championships were in the middle of June. So it was two-ish months in the process. just from, and then going to HYROX Berlin, showing initiative there, organizing everything while we're actually in Norway, while you're in Scandinavia, while you're in London, and then turning it around. Relationship with the athletes, with the clients, being responsive at all time, booking all those flights. So much detail that you often don't see on Instagram. That's why we're doing this podcast as well, because we're able to share a lot more information. And for us, it's not about showing, hey, look at us. No, we're learning on the way. We're doing so many mistakes. We just want to share and make this whole industry a bit more open and less gatekeeping, because we're all striving for the same goal. And it's not competition, it's collaboration. That would be super cool to one day maybe be able to even work with like people from our community together. There is more than enough to eat for everyone.
Yeah. And I think coming to the learnings, and you touch upon luck already, to be honest, it is something I've been thinking about the last days very often, right? What is luck? I think the best description, to make it short, I've ever heard was luck is like a bus. It drives around the block. If you get to the bus station, there's no plan of when it's going to arrive, but you need to be prepared. You need to be there early. You need to have the ticket. There are just so many steps with so many variables that are not set. But the only thing that is set is that luck goes around the block and it's going to come. You don't know when it's coming. But, and I think I think we think alike in a lot of ways as well, since we come from sports and team sports. Because how often did, let's say, the client not like they didn't accept our invitation, like our appointment or the calendar invite we sent them, and still we went on blindly to prepare the pitch, to prepare everything, and just in case they come. Like HYROX, for example, there was no commitment at all. How often we were just going and just hoping, of course, because we don't know.
Yeah.
In the process, you don't know. But now looking back, it looks like, oh my God, this is one of the most perfect stories ever. It was everything else but perfect.
Yeah.
Everything else but perfect. But at the same time, I think we need to admit that luck is part of the game, but preparation is key.
Yeah.
Preparation are the tools and your weapons to maybe counter it, but once it arrives, for you to actually access luck. It's one thing to be lucky, but can you access luck as well? That's the other thing, right? And I think through this story, and of course for the athletes who have been so nice, for the second person of I think this is maybe one sales lesson. It's called account-based experience of sales, which means if you've had one person or one touch point to one person regarding a brand, to not give up, even though the person is not responding, just make sure to not disturb the person too much. But if they are somewhere, try to find a second person, try to find a second door into the company. And I think that is something, of course, we didn't plan. We were doing it as we go. But this is definitely one lesson we learned for other accounts we have or other clients we might have in the future that are not responsive, even to you out there. Maybe they are not responsive, but look out, where will they be at a marathon? Or just, there are always different touch points you can have, and be nice at all times and present yourself the best way and make sure you're prepared.
Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think that was definitely one of the biggest lessons I've took out of it, especially looking back in the last session, was like, how did we do this actually?
Yeah. And I think it's also just, I love the analogy, and I think it's a perfect way also kind of to bring this to an end, because we're also still trying to find the perfect length to not keep this podcast too long. Obviously, we want to give you guys as much detail as possible, but without obviously not stretching it too long. So it would be actually cool to maybe hear from you. Do you prefer more the very in-depth, longer podcast episodes that maybe go up to an hour, 50 minutes? Or, I mean, we tried to aim for 30 minutes. Now it's 40 minutes. I think it's a good step in the right direction, but we also would love to just get a bit more insight from you guys. What are you keen and what are you interested in? Because obviously, yes, we do the podcast to share our stories and to talk a bit about what's going on in Mauja or around the brand. But we would also love to hear what you guys are interested in. We're also going to try to bring on more people in the future to make it less about us necessarily, but like we said, share inspiring and like cool stories about athletes, founders, or creators in this industry. And if you have any recommendation, or maybe you even have a very cool story to share, hit us up. We're super, super keen on getting to know you guys a bit better.
Indeed. And I think this is a more communal thing instead of from us to you or whatever. We want to interact with you guys. And I think the more learning we all share and the more mistakes we all share, because we are all human at the end of the day, I think the further we all can get.
Yeah.
Right?
Iron sharps iron, baby.
Yes, indeed, sir.
Okay.
And thus, we come to an end of today's episode. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for tuning in. And comment on what we just said if you have more ideas or what you are more interested in. And leave a like, leave a follow, and see you on the next time.
Yes, please. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure to maybe give us also a rating on Spotify or YouTube, like Tim said. That would be really, really helpful. And then would also help us to just bring this podcast to more people and share the message. So until next time, peace.
Godspeed.